For more than 100 years, these images have haunted the imagination of rugby players throughout the world. These warriors dressed in black to mourn the death of their opponents dominate the world of rugby. But what is the secret of the All Black myth? To unravel it, we must go beyond these images, venturing into a different world, a world resonant with the echoes of national identity, sacred symbols, sacrifice, and even of religion. The All Black saga is the story of a whole nation gripped by a passion, the adventure of a people charged with a mission, in which the players are the heroes of almost mystical proportions.
The All Blacks was always a dream of mine, and when that dream finally came true and got given the jersey to put it on, that's when you really first felt like you were an All Black. Every time I put on the jersey, I always look at the silver fern and look at the number on the back and just think how lucky I am to get the chance to wear it. It's pretty special.
I went from a boy from South Auckland who could walk down the street and not be recognised to a boy from South Auckland that everybody wanted to know what he did, and that was a big change.
Look at this spin pass there from Cornfeld, and no doubt about it. Look at the pace of Lomo. He's such an exciting runner when he gets going.
With his 6th try of this World Cup.
Our voyage of discovery in New Zealand starts with the players of today's All Black team. Those who are living the dream, who hold the key to its secrets. They spoke to us in the intimacy of their training camp, offering a glimpse of what it means to be an All Black in a country where rugby is far more than just a sport. "20 years have passed since the All Blacks won the first Webb Ellis Cup. For them, the coming World Cup in France is a rendezvous with history. Every player carries on his shoulders the burden of the expectations of an entire nation. But even more, the immense duty of maintaining the myth at its peak and of confirming New Zealand's place as the greatest rugby nation in the world."
People expect us to sort of continue that, and even going to places like France, we have, they love the All Blacks, and it means a lot to us, that we can go out there and represent our country, and we know we've got the following overseas and also the following back home, so yeah, it's a great feeling.
We want to add to the legacy of the All Blacks, so we have the goal each time we come together as an All Black team to leave the jersey in a better place than it was when we arrived, and that's, if we keep having that goal, we're always going to do it justice. But we're only caretakers of the jersey. Someone, when we're finished, will come and carry on the same thing. It's only ours to look after and keeping the right traditions and do right by it, and that's the way we look at it. So there's a wee bit of pressure that goes with that, because there's 100 years of history that's been a lot of blood and sweat and pain that has gone into building the All Black legacy, and we just don't want to ever let that down. And I guess you can see that as a burden, but I think the best way to see it is a huge challenge and an honour to get that chance.
We are very connected to our past and our history. It sort of helped shape us and define us, really, as our history. It's given us a strong foundation to understand where we're going to in this new contemporary society where we're multicultural and all the rest of it. But there are certain things about the All Blacks that haven't changed over all that time, and we must always go back to the past to give us that strength and give us the, I guess, the vision to know where to go to forward, because you have to know where you've come from.
New Zealand has produced many of rugby's greatest players, but the value of an All Black is not determined simply by his qualities as a player. Being an All Black means above all being part of a legend, which has grown over more than a century and which is tightly interwoven with the history of New Zealand as a country. Our quest takes us to an official reception at Wellington's Parliament buildings, welcoming back to the country a jersey worn by one of the legendary 1905 originals. Past and present All Blacks are there, as are family members, political figures, and New Zealand's Prime Minister, all united in a kind of communion around this sacred relic.
New Zealand takes tremendous pride in the All Blacks because this little country of 4 million people has produced the greatest rugby team in the world, the most recognisable name in rugby in the world, All Blacks. So the record of achievement over more than a century playing internationally has been simply phenomenal. I can't imagine New Zealand without the All Blacks. I was born in 1950. We all grew up knowing about the All Blacks, knowing who the All Blacks were, following the games. It's been an enormous part of New Zealand culture and history to have a very, very famous rugby football sports team.
The history of the black jersey is important to every New Zealander, and to see something like that in person, you know, it makes it more real. And you know, to think what they did 100 years ago, travel on a boat all the way over the UK and play 36 games. You try and do that in the modern day, and it just could never happen like that. You know, and these guys were tough, and they did it the hard way, and really set the benchmark. And I suppose, you know, New Zealanders now look back and see what they did then, and it inspires us. And when we think we're getting it tough now, you just got to look and see how hard they did it, and it makes us pretty proud of what they achieved.
The image of the team is something that's grown over 100 years, and you know, there's not much we can do to if you like, manipulate that. You know, it's something that we're lucky enough to enjoy, this fantastic brand that's grown up because of players that played 100 years ago and 75 years ago and 50 years ago, who have built, you know, the All Black story and the All Black legend into what it is. It's not something that we really can radically change by what we're doing today, but we can try and add to it, and that's the role of, you know, that's what each All Black team tries to do.
Our voyage leads us inevitably to the great players of the past. Between the guardians of the All Black history and the players of today, there is more than just a common thread. They are linked by a strong communal bond, which transcends the generations. They are all brothers of the same family, which today represents the true aristocracy of the New Zealand nation.
We've represented our country, and once you've worn that jersey and played for the All Blacks, you're always an All Black. And we have reunions now, and we talk up our tours of what we had and what we didn't do, and all tell lies about how good we were or how bad we were, or all those sort of things, or why we lost this game or won that game. And yeah, it is a tradition, and it is something we're very proud of, and the modern player is no different to what we were.
For Graham Henry, the current All Black coach, the strength of this tradition has never waned. In his eyes, this is what drives the passion of the young players of today.
Oh, there's a lot of tradition and history in All Black rugby, and the players respect that and value that. They're trying to create a legacy of their own, a special part of history in the game right now, but they also respect what has happened in All Black rugby over the last 100 years. Brian Lahore, for example, is an ex-All Black captain, one of the great All Blacks, ex-All Black coach and an ex-All Black manager. So he relates this team to the past. He can pass that experience on to the current coaches, the current players, which is very important.
Meeting this living legend of New Zealand rugby is one of the highlights of our visit. Brian Lahore, the charismatic number 8 and captain from the 1960s, here in his natural element, surrounded by sheep on his Wairarapa farm north of Wellington.
I like the people who play it. I think it's a special game. You have to be a special person. You have to be, quite strong mentally and physically to play the game. I like watching the game. I think it is enjoyable to watch, and I've always been involved, and I guess a lot of my friends that I have are involved in rugby, so consequently I enjoy their company as well.
35 years have passed since he last played for the All Blacks, but for him nothing has changed. The All Black passion is still there.
I would be happy to play now, everyone says, well, is the game better now, are the players better than they were? I think if you're a great player whenever, 30, 40, 50 years ago, if you were a very good player then, you'd be a very good player now, given the circumstances that they play under today.
Oh, magnificent! A great try in the corner for the All Black captain.
The voices from the past, the tradition of the game is actually recognised, and that they are kept up to date with what is going on. So yeah, it's very much an effort to try and bridge and to make sure that people are able to sit back and to enjoy what they've achieved later on in life.
And Gary Wetton gets in, straight out string.
We say when you become an All Black, you've joined the most exclusive club there is in the world, and we like to put it up there in a high pedestal, and you need to live to those values and morals, if you like. And yes, we have a very close affiliation with the players of today and yesterday.
All international teams have their pantheons of great players, but with the All Blacks, the myth renders them immortal. Each player has a sequential number linking him to the gallery of greats. Today there are more than 1,000 All Blacks who form the celestial chain of 1,000 heroes who live forever in the nation's memory.
There is a bond that all of us have, all 1,000 of us that we have. May not have met our predecessors like Dave Gallagher, who was the very first All Black captain, but we have a strong bond, and we know what he stood for our country and as our leader, and we hold that as part of us. We still remember our heritage, but we want to add to that heritage.
All young boys born in New Zealand are potential All Blacks, so there is a vital necessity to transmit the passion in its purest form. This idea of transmission is expressed in the image of the pass. A rugby pass is perhaps the finest sporting movement ever invented by man, and surely the most loaded with meaning. Passing the ball to your mate, so that the collective movement can continue, and the grace of a moment can last, so that the dream never stops.
I started playing rugby when I was 5 because the All Blacks visited my hometown and trained on this ground, and I went down to watch them. And I was fascinated about all the people standing around and watching them and admiring them. And I remember one All Black came up to me one day and when I was getting an autograph from him, and it was Michael Jones, and he just said, that it was awesome to be in the All Blacks. And from there on I was just like, wow, I want to be an All Black.
I was watching the '87 World Cup, and seeing us win that for the first time was probably a great moment when I was watching when I was little. But I think it's pretty much every guy that grows up in New Zealand, it's like a dream to play for the All Blacks, and we're probably one of the lucky ones to play for them.
Yeah, I think the first time I wanted to be an All Black was when I was about 10, watching the All Blacks go on India tour and getting up in the middle of the night and watching them play. It was pretty exciting. Then watching them do the haka really was sort of the first thing I seen, and then I learnt it and started doing it in the mirror, which probably didn't help too much, but that was obviously my first recollection of wanting to be an All Black, so it was something exciting.
I think it's every little boy's dream in New Zealand to become an All Black, and I was no different. I was fortunate enough to have an uncle who played for the All Blacks at the time. When I got to about 7, my uncle Graham Bishop made the All Blacks, and it was always something for me to aspire to growing up, so I had the belief that maybe I could get there one day as well.
No matter how far back you go, it always comes down to the same thing, the power of emotion produced by the All Black dream.
I wake up today and I still can't believe that I've ever been an All Black. I still feel very humble about being an All Black, but when I wake up in the morning, I can't believe it. Back 1971, there were 3 million other people in New Zealand couldn't believe it either. But
I certainly didn't expect to get as far as I did. I dreamt about wanting to be an All Black, but I didn't ever think I would be All Black captain or anything like that. That sort of just came, it happened.
Well, the best moment you ever have is playing your first game. To say you can't be called an All Black until you've played, and the best moment is first of all being selected. You don't know what to do, where to go. I was only very young, and everyone thinks you go and drink too much, but you don't. You're too nervous or too shy, and but playing for the All Blacks is the greatest thing. And then once you've played for them, you want to be a good All Black.
I played my first game against the Lions. That I really felt the I suppose the pressure of being an All Black, and remember sitting down in the changing room in Dunedin before we went out against the Lions and looking around the room, and the guy Ian Kirkpatrick, who I'd sort of watched when I was at school. Kirky was an All Black, and you're suddenly sitting in the changing room alongside someone that you've actually watched for a long time, and it's sort of a bit hard to believe you're actually there, and just fantastic to be there, but also just a huge feeling that you just want to get out there and be the best you can be and make sure that you do the job for the team and for the jersey.
Rugby is New Zealand's national sport. It dominates the whole of the country. But it's far more than that. Rugby is present in all the schools, at all levels, and it still plays a significant role in the country's education system. It generates a state of mind, which is present throughout the land, an overall system of values which permanently surrounds the youth of the country.
Of course we want to be All Blacks. That's New Zealand. Just national pride. Yeah, it's sort of elite rugby players, I suppose, and what everyone aims for.
With Dan Carter and Aaron Moja, we visit Christchurch Boys High School, their old school, and one of the great nurseries of All Black talent throughout the years.
Yeah, a lot of history with all the ex All Blacks caps, boys high caps here, dating back to 1928.
A flashback to their childhood, when they were beginning to make their mark in rugby, when they started to dream the All Black dream.
When I was 6 years old, that's when I started playing rugby out in the country, about 30 minutes south of Christchurch. My dad was a pretty staunch rugby fan, and he was sort of pushing me along, trying to get me into playing rugby as early as I can. And I think that's about the time that Mum sort of let me get in there and play as well. So yeah, that's probably my earliest memory.
I started playing. I was about 4 or 5 when I started playing. I had a couple of older brothers, and just used to go and watch them and decided to get into it and tag along. And play with the big boys and got knocked around the first couple of years, but it's probably there where I sort of learnt to play with a bit of instinct in that.
You know, I think you know, my childhood days playing rugby with my friends, just passing the ball around, having fun, kicking the ball around. You know, I think that's where I built most of my skill base that I use today. If you want to become the best, then you really have to put in a lot of work, you know, outside the training pitch. You know, those extra sessions by yourself. Just keep working at your game, and just so you can perfect, you know, every skill. And even when you do that, you just keep working at it and working at it, so you can take it to the next level and become the best.
I knew it was always going to be hard, but it was always a goal of mine to make it one day. But I knew the reality that not everybody could make it, and I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to play for Canterbury when I left school, and from there things just progressed, and yeah, it happened pretty quick. I was in the All Blacks about 3 years after I left school, so yeah, for me it happened pretty fast.
One day I will be an All Black. It is the credo of each one of these children of New Zealand, and all their hopes which culminate in the unique moment when they finally become an All Black, and when for the first time they experience the harsh realities of international rugby. For players, there are memories which never fade.
It was a game it was in 1996, and it was a game against Eastern Province in South Africa, and quite by chance, it was almost to the day 20 years before that my father played his first game for the All Blacks against the same team on the same ground.
I think the main thing is, you know, when you first put on that jersey and you stand in that room before the first test with 5 minutes to go and all the reserves are gone and it's 15, and I looked across the room and I saw Colin Meads and Ian Kirkpatrick and Fergie McCormick and Sid Going, and I wondered why I was in the room. I couldn't believe it. I
remember just running around like a madman, like I had rabies or something, just frothing at the mouth, trying to hit every ruck and running to everything that clearly you don't have to run to, but you were kind of fueled by this supernatural energy that I haven't experienced since, I must admit.
I was 20 years old, and I think I lasted 29 minutes. I fell on the cricket pitch against Argentina and broke my shoulder in the first half. That was on my first game, which was a bit unlucky. I managed to stay on the field for another 15 minutes, but I suppose that's probably not the way you want to remember your first game, but that was my first game for the All Blacks.
The first games are always the moment of truth. They are often a harsh and cruel discovery in which the dream is submitted to the primary virtue of the All Blacks, humility.
One of the toughest games I've played, it was for the All Blacks, I think it was about my 5th test, and we played against South Africa here in New Zealand. And the guy I marked was Corne Krieger, who was the captain of the Springboks at the time. But he's an incredibly tough character, and he never ever gave you an inch. He was physical. He really made sure you're there, and I came off the field. I felt during the game wondering what I was doing out there. I just couldn't get into my game. I couldn't play very well, and I was getting bashed as well at the same time. You know, in a legal way, but I was just getting physically dominated, and it was the first time I realised what it was all about, playing international rugby, I guess.
Many possible paths lead to the fulfilment of the All Black dream, whether you come from a small village in the cold of South Island or the mean streets of South Auckland, whether you were born into the game or you started late. Making it into the All Blacks is always an encounter with destiny.
I grew up in a small rural New Zealand. Not big cities. I grew up in a small place, so rugby's still very much a way of life in small communities. On Saturday mornings, the parents go and watch their children play, and in the afternoon they play, and there's a big social gathering in the evening. It's very much intertwined around community life, and that was my introduction to rugby as a young boy. It's quite different, I think, in cities.
I was sent to boarding school, and that's where I was introduced to rugby very late. I was 14, so I started rugby late, and it was more to keep me out of trouble. I lost a lot of cousins and relatives that I had that are close to me there through gang fights where I grew up. When you have your loved ones hurt and you lose them and they die quite young. One of them at the time was only 12, and I also had a relative who had his head cut off. So that gives you an idea of what sort of trouble. All Black jersey stands for a lot more than just New Zealand. It actually stands for that there is a multicultural group that lies under this jersey, and it doesn't matter where you come from. If you, it brings loyalty, it brings bond, professionalism, honesty, and honour amongst the players, and that's what makes them All Blacks.
Direction Rotorua, the home of Maori culture. There are many painful memories in the history of the Maori in New Zealand, not only through the difficult relationship with the Pakahas, the white people, but also through their own intertribal wars. Today, the Maori represent only 14% of the population, but Maori culture constitutes the true reference in terms of national traditions. But above all, the nation's multiracial, multicultural profile has become one of the great foundation stones of the All Black ethos.
The first team to go overseas from New Zealand in 1888 was a Maori team. They toured Europe, they toured England, Scotland, and in 1895 the first All Black team went overseas. So the first team to go away was the New Zealand native team.
And then the Pakahas, the white settlers, regained control of the game, and it would be many years before the arrival en masse of Maori and Polynesian talent in the All Black team.
I think a lot of it also, the biggest changes started to occur post-Second World War, because during the wars the Maori showed himself to be quite an effective fighter.
Our quest now takes us to the Maori Rugby Academy in Rotorua, the only school of its type in the world. Here, young Maori players, often from lower socio-economic groups, are recruited with the aim of turning them into great players of the future. Here, in a school such as this, it is easy to see how rugby corresponds to the culture and the innate qualities of Maori men.
Yeah, from what I can remember, I love grass. I started playing rugby when I was probably 3, 4, 5. Just took a liking to the game pretty early, especially when you have a team like the All Blacks coming from New Zealand. I think it's every little boy's dream, and I'm on that. I'm trying to follow that dream, and that's why I'm here.
I think we tend to have a natural sort of understanding of the game, and we do a lot of things on the field by instinct, things that come naturally to us where others may have to work at honing those skills. So we're lucky in that regard that a lot of it comes natural to a lot of Māori players, but it's how they use it after that. That's important. So it's really about doing things outside of the norm. So they're pretty unorthodox type of things, but it's a style that we try and encourage because it's fantastic to watch, and it's very good entertainment value. But I think it just brings a different dimension to the game.
It is hard, but I think if you put the work in yourself, it'll make things a lot easier for you. It's like, just seeing us here still now, and compared to the first 2 weeks of the academy, you could say it's a bit of a miracle we're still here. But I think just from those first 2 weeks, it matured us, And yeah.
Leading haka, I just feel proud to be Māori and to be sort of representing all my friends, leading my friends, and I know they got my back when I lead it, because they all support me. Yeah, so I enjoy it thoroughly.
And the key thing that it brought a long time ago was the Maori culture is very collective, very tribal, it's not individual. Very few Maori a long time ago played golf, very individual. They always love the team sport. They're very much a team player as opposed to an individual player. So they can give away their individual thing for the benefit of the collective. And that's how it is in the Maori tribe. In the tribal, it's the collective is the most important. The unity of the tribe is the most important. So when you go into the rugby environment, into the team environment, we're already used to that.
The Maori culture in New Zealand, I suppose, percentage of people, more Maoris play rugby than any, they all play it because it suits their temperament, suits their lifestyle and suits their upbringing and all that sort of thing. So Maori rugby has a big part of New Zealand.
I think it's probably the strength of our team, just because we have so many different ethnics playing for our team. It probably makes us a lot stronger because all the different cultures bring different strengths to our game. Especially the Polynesian boys bring a lot of flair to our team, and I know the boys born here in New Zealand as well, just very hard workers, so I think it makes a good sort of combination for our team.
The greatest strength of this team is that diversity, but it also is our greatest weakness. If we don't work on strengthening the interconnections of our different races, of our different cultures, if we don't work on rejoicing and enhancing those differences and saying that it's okay to be different, in fact, that we want you to be different, bring all that to the pot and let's make all that really strong.
This melting pot, or what Anton Oliver calls this multicultural society, has produced an incredible model of social integration. And the perfect image of this is the haka, performed in unison, with the same heart, the same devotion, the same fervour by all the players, whether they are Pākehā, Maori or Pacific Islanders, united as one, ready to meet the challenge together.
But yeah, the haka is it's an internal thing. It's your whole body giving a message, a very clear message. It's the passion coming through, but you've also got to be grounded. In other words, your feet must be on the ground. You mustn't lose control of yourself.
Haka is a way of expressing themselves as a group of people, and that's also important to them. It's showing some respect for the country they come from, and that brings the team together as one.
Yeah, I lived in England and got brought up in England most of my life, so I suppose I missed out on that side of things. So coming back here when I was 13, I sort of started to pick it all up again and learn about it all and really love doing the haka.
Learned the history about the haka and what it actually means and why we're actually doing it, that we're not actually going out there to intimidate, but we're actually doing it for ourselves. We're not doing it to make the opposition angry, but it has done, obviously, but we're actually doing it for ourselves and just to know the history of New Zealand and that haka is part of New Zealand.
The haka is more of something that unites us as a team and brings us together. Like other teams sing their national anthem together. We do the haka, and that's what's special for us, and it brings us together, and I think it brings New Zealand together, and it's something that we can hopefully carry on doing properly and with good faith for the culture.
It is pretty motivating, I used to do it at high school in my first 15, and from there, it sort of used to make me feel a lot more energised and want to get out there and run around and do what I can for the team, so it's pretty motivating for me.
So as soon as the haka is finished, you're ready to play rugby. As soon as the haka is finished, the warrior's ready to go to war. Because if you're not grounded, you're going to get taken out. So you must be clear in your mind about what you're doing. One moment you're doing the haka, but next moment you're very clear thinking.
For all the players who take the field, the match has the same meaning. Defend the black jersey and the silver fern embroidered on their hearts, the symbols of a nation, almost objects of worship. A jersey without colour, as black as the night. But it is only at night that the stars come out.
Now on the Australian 25.
For every All Black, past or present, there is one moment when their life stood still. The moment when they pull on the mythical tunic for the first time. The first jersey is like a freeze frame, and the rest of his life is an unending return to the source.
Just over 1,000 players in 100 odd years, and that is part of it. You ask any player, most of the majority, all the players will have kept their very first jersey, and if they get to the milestones of 50th or 100 or so forth, they keep those, and that's the one thing that you hand over.
When I got my first test jersey that I was going to start in, it was a real special feeling for me. I held on to that, and something that'll stick in, the back of my mind for the rest of my life. It's a very important part of my life.
It was a big day. I remember getting the jersey handed to me. You had to go to the manager's room to get your jersey, your team jersey, and it was the happiest day of my life.
Every time I put it on, I'm pretty proud to and patriotic New Zealander and passionate towards the cause of representing the country.
And putting on the black jersey and the silver fern, it really means a lot to us. Especially with the silver fern on our chest. So it's a pretty big thing for us.
And I took it away to my room and I put it on and had a look in the mirror. It's kind of a bizarre feeling looking at yourself for the first time with the All Black jersey on.
It's special, and you feel like you grow again another couple of inches, and we go out there and it never changes the feeling.
I think it's very similar to everybody, even today, when the player gets his the All Black jersey and he puts it on, it's a special feeling, I think, and one that it's very easy to remember.
The essential power of the jersey is its ability to transcend whoever is wearing it, propelling them to the heights of the All Black ideal. When an All Black puts on the jersey, he drapes himself for all time in the values of his nation.
Your duties as an All Black do not finish just by playing. Your duty finishes on the field. It carries on off the field by the way you represent yourself and the way you treat others, and also the way you respect your elders and the people who have gone before you.
People look up to you. All the children in New Zealand idolise you, and you've got a responsibility as an All Black to be a decent citizen.
I think it's a way of life, you can take what you learn from being an All Black into the rest of your life, because you have a lot of rugby, a lot of life to live after playing rugby, then you could be a better person. Hopefully I'm like that. I guess rugby has helped to shape the character of the people, the fact that New Zealand's a raw, was a raw New Zealand country, and that people took to the game of rugby, and eventually were able to go back and to beat people that had basically been responsible for New Zealand being formed, went back and beat the English and beat the Scots and the Irish, which was where their forebearers came from. I think it gave them a lot of challenge, a lot of pride in being able to do that.
The All Blacks do express a lot of qualities about New Zealand, particularly their unassuming character. New Zealanders tend to be quite modest, they're not braggers, they're humble in victory, they're gracious in defeat, and the All Blacks sum up those characteristics.
Values for the All Blacks are not just words, and there is no better proof of this than the story of Keith Murdoch. Involved in a fight in the hotel where the team was staying during a tour in Wales in 1972, Keith Murdoch was sent home to New Zealand. Peter Bush, who photographed the All Blacks for over half a century, remembers the incident with the same emotion as the day it happened.
Really, he was expelled from Britain, which is being like deported, you could say, like a refugee status. But anyhow, he went from Birmingham down to Euston Station, where I was in London, and I took this photograph of Murdoch walking along the station, being escorted to a taxi, and later that night he went out on a Qantas plane bound for Australia, and then he was going to fly from Australia to New Zealand. Well, when the plane got to Darwin in Northern Australia, he got off the plane and he disappeared. I hope before I finish my rugby career, I want to go and sit with him and interview him, myself, Murdoch and I.
And in 45 years, Murdoch has never returned home, convinced that he betrayed the All Blacks ideal.
As players, we all know that no one is bigger than the game. The game has been there longer than us, and it will be there longer beyond when we die. So, you know, we are only part of it. All we can do is do justice to the game.
The true secret of the All Blacks is perhaps that there is no secret. Here, more than anywhere else, the game belongs to the players. The All Blacks are descended from two major lineages, the men of the land, the farmers, and those from the islands, men of the sea, who conquered the wide open spaces of the Pacific. Every All Black combines the strength and the simplicity of the Pākehā farmer with the speed, the agility, and the instinct of the free-running Polynesians.
The country boys probably had an advantage because they were physical workers, and we were probably a little bit stronger than the boys who were brought up in town. So yes, being on a farm, I'm sure, did help me quite a lot.
Half the forward pack in the All Blacks nowadays were farmers because they were, you know, hard work and doing all the hard work and that sort of thing. Not any farmers in the All Blacks now, they're just rugby players, but in our days a big percentage of the forwards were farmers, and so it was an occupation that went well with rugby, you know.
I guess running around on the farm when I was young, I mean, I was probably fit and you know, got to throw the ball around, kick the ball around whenever I wanted, which was I guess an advantage.
The French used to love to run the ball. The Argentinians loved to run the ball. The Maori always ran the ball. They throw the ball around. So now you look at the Super 12, the Super 14, and you see a lot of running with the ball. That's what they bring to the game. They love the flair, they love the passion, they love to run with the ball.
The New Zealanders have an innate passion for attacking rugby, both a natural inclination and a state of mind. And this passion for attacking rugby is the spark which drives the team to produce a game of perpetual movement, which has been the All Black trademark for over 100 years.
We try and attack, and whether we have the ball or not, we're always trying to attack and put pressure on our opposition.
Clearly there are risks, but it's about getting over that level of anxiety, and that's where you either go out and win the World Cup or you don't.
We like to play an open style of footy where we're throwing the ball around and having a good time and scoring tries.
Attack for us has been really mentally ruthless and trying to be accurate and control the game. Attack doesn't mean helter-skelter, you know. It's being calculating and not giving up. We want to use the whole width of the field, and to do that you have to have players that can pass. All 15 have to be able to do it.
So that's just the way that we enjoy the game. And as I said earlier, every young player in New Zealand wants to be a Dan Carter or a Joe Rokithoka. They don't want to be a Chris Jack or a Tony Woodcock. So that's just how we are, and I mean, I don't think that'll ever change.
The intoxicating thrill of running rugby is shared by the whole country. The All Black game, when it reaches, as it does today, its finest expression, inflames the nation of supporters, and rugby becomes a reason to exist, giving New Zealand a place of honour on the world stage.
I think New Zealand are right up at the very top in terms of their passion for the game. And you know, we're not a very big country, but we are passionate, and I think over the years we have punched above our weight.
The whole country really gets in behind us, especially when we're overseas. So, yeah, for me, I hold that responsibility very high, and I try to do my best every time I pull on a black jersey.
But at the same time, this popular enthusiasm brings with it the crushing weight of expectations. When things go wrong, the All Blacks are never forgiven. In other countries, when the national team wins, it makes the front page news. But here, it is more often when the All Blacks lose.
Oh, it's a huge expectation by the country that the All Blacks win the rugby, play exceptionally well. I think you just get used to that expectation. It becomes a way of life. You expect it, you live by it, and you don't expect anything else.
It's easy to get to the top, but it's hard to stay there, and we want to keep being the team to beat. And you know, you aren't going to win every one, but we've got to keep wanting to improve, and that's our goal, and that's a huge, exciting challenge, I guess.
It's impossible to imagine a World Cup without the All Blacks winning. Shouldn't the best team in the world always be world champion? The shock wave of a defeat would have a shattering effect on the nation, but it will not weaken the All Black myth.
The national spirits would go through the roof were New Zealand to win the Rugby World Cup again.
If we play to our best, I think we're the best team in the world. If we hit our straps and play to our potential at the right time.
I suppose the thing that is most difficult is that we've tended in the last 20 odd years to have actually played some of our best rugby prior to or between World Cups, and just getting it right on the day has been something which we haven't achieved often enough.
Let's hope that we do get it together next year. Otherwise, we might say to the All Blacks, you'll have to go and live in Tierra del Fuego or Buenos Aires or Mexico City. You can't come back to New Zealand.
The All Blacks are very privileged to have that high regard by the rest of the world. The brand is highly respected, but that has been earned by 100 years of history, 100 years of success, and it can be lost as well. So it's important to maintain that respect, continue to earn that respect from the rest of the world, and that's obviously one of the goals, if you like, of the All Black team.
As we reach the end of our voyage, we also reach the heart of the myth and the reason why it will continue. Here in the obscurity of a changing room, young players who are not well known yet, but already have their hearts set on the black jersey, a dream projected into the future of one day becoming an All Black.
Everything that I have done has started from a dream, and you know, I've lived that dream, and no one else can take that away. And it's you know, most probably in the near future, you'll see someone who will start a dream, and you'll start a different chapter and a different legacy for the All Blacks.